Good morning and welcome to SnapTech IT's monthly webinar for January 2025. My name is Ted Hulsy. I'm Chief Revenue Officer with SnapTech IT and your host for today's event. Thanks for joining in for the live session. This webinar will be recorded and circulated to all the participants. You can always visit us also on our YouTube channel for all of our content on demand. The topic for today is Microsoft Copilot Readiness, key considerations to get your company AI ready. Today I'm joined by SnapTech IT co-founder and CEO, Karl Bickmore. Karl, welcome to the webinar.
Thanks, Ted. Glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation today. This is some exciting stuff. I'm a total geek about this AI and Copilot stuff.
All right, yeah, we've been doing a ton of work on it, talking to tons of clients, doing a ton of events. So I think we've got a lot to share. And it's very newsworthy. I think it's probably the question we're getting the most from clients and prospects about how to really get busy with this technology and have it make a big impact in your business. So one thing we always do before we get started is we spend about just 1 to 2 minutes letting everybody on the line know who we are. If you don't know SnapTech IT, we just want to let you know we are a cybersecurity first IT service provider with operations in Atlanta, Georgia, Phoenix, Arizona, and San Francisco, California. We are all about eliminating technology pain for our clients and helping them boost productivity and improve their cybersecurity posture. When new clients come to us, they're usually struggling with under-optimized IT operations, big cybersecurity concerns, employee frustrations about technology. You know, despite everything that happens in the world, it doesn't seem technology gets easier and easier. There's always a ton of complexity, and we're here to try to take that out of your lives so that your employees can get back to work and be productive. When we bring on new clients, we execute our proven process that we've been developing over 20 years, and our clients get a technology plan and a predictable IT budget. And then we implement our best practices, which help you drive higher levels of productivity in your workforce, put to bed a lot of those cybersecurity concerns where you're losing sleep, and give you that peace of mind that you have a true technology partner that's helping you navigate this complex world. We really engage with clients in 2 different ways. For smaller organizations, if you don't have an IT department, we do what we call fully managed IT, and we look after everything. We also work with larger organizations where you may have an IT director or an IT team, and you're looking to outsource a slice of your IT workload. And we call that co-managed IT. So whether you're large or growing, we're here to serve you and help you. So that's it about kind of just getting to know us. Let's have a look at today's agenda. Karl and I are going to dive in and talk about how to get your organization ready for Copilot and go through what we see as roughly like the 10 key considerations that you should be addressing. We want your questions, so please use the Q&A feature in GoToWebinar and hit us with your questions. Our colleague Nathan is on the line here monitoring the Q&A log as well, and we'll try to address your questions live. But I think before we dive into those key considerations, we wanted to do a polling question. So Nathan's going to activate the poll here, but what are your Microsoft Copilot plans for 2025? So please, Nathan's going to put the poll open. Give us a little feedback on where you are in your journey. That'll help Karl and I kind of calibrate our comments as we go along here.
All right, the poll is up. The question is, what are your Copilot plans for 2025? Would you answer, we are already using Copilot and we're experts? Or we are already using Copilot, but we feel like beginners? Or we have Copilot and we are having trouble getting started? Or we know we need it, but don't have a plan for it yet? Or is your answer, R2D2 is my Copilot? What Copilot are you talking about?
Oh, thank you for the obligatory nerd joke. It's fantastic.
All right, so Nathan, when you want to share the results, that'd be super.
Yeah, nearly everybody has voted, so let me close that poll and sharing the results.
We got a few R2D2s.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for engaging in the poll. And yeah, I mean, I think the hard part about this technology is not turning it on and licensing it. It's making sure that you're looking around the corner and thinking about all the different kind of security and data privacy concerns and that sort of thing, and making sure that you're maximizing the tech and really driving a high level of ROI from your investment. So we're going to get into those topics. What we want to do just real quick is kind of ground us a little bit and make sure we've got some perspective on things, because it's a very dynamic space. I mean, one of the things we're going to talk about here in a moment is literally news from just last week. There was a big announcement from Microsoft. And first, just where are we focused? Most of the conversations we're having with clients is how to enable Copilot for your Microsoft 365 environment. So on the far right of your screen, Copilot is an extra add-on license you need in your Microsoft 365 environment for each licensed user. It costs roughly $30 a month per employee. For the longest time, you could only license it on an annual basis. You can now do it month to month, and it's only about a 5% uplift. So I think it's $31.50 a month if you want to license it on a month-to-month basis. So that's really the bulk of what we're going to be talking about today is B2B organizations, companies, organizations who are going to be activating Copilot for their Microsoft environment. Now, what Microsoft is certainly doing is they are giving more and more opportunities for individuals and organizations to try this technology on a freemium basis. So today you can leverage Copilot. Just go to the Copilot website and play with this technology. You'll see a lot of this functionality baked into the Bing search engine as well. But the thing they just introduced last week is what they're calling Copilot Chat for Microsoft 365. So this does not cost organizations anything. So it's turned on if you log into your Microsoft, Microsoft365.com. It's freely available, and it will give you the way to kind of summarize the experience is it's like using ChatGPT inside of your Microsoft 365 tenant. So it's going to give you the ability to do queries, ask it to write things, do prompts. But it's not on the freemium basis. It's not actually integrated with Microsoft Word or PowerPoint or Outlook or anything like that. So they're just trying to make it so that it's more and more accessible, more and more baked into the platform, gives people more opportunities to kick the tires, try it out. That's Copilot Chat for Microsoft 365. On the next slide, I'll kind of show from a feature perspective how it compares with Copilot for Microsoft 365. And then Copilot Pro is the prosumer version. For $20 a month, you could turn this on any Microsoft Office license, and you can actually have it work inside Word, Excel, PowerPoint, but you won't have the B2B functions. You won't have the integration with Teams and so on. So this is just a quick summary of what we're talking about when we're talking about the free version, Microsoft 365 Copilot Chat, and the full version. So the big differences are the integration with Teams and Outlook and Word, et cetera. But this, again, gives everybody the opportunity to really start using this technology in the Microsoft platform. What I'm going to do now is hand the ball to Karl, and we're going to talk. He's going to tackle 6 or 7 slides here and talk about our perspective on a couple of these really important considerations. So, Karl, over to you.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, I come from this as a perspective of a business owner who tries to say, okay, what am I missing? What do I need to do to be competitive? What advantages can I take? What will enable my team to be happier, more effective, more efficient? These are the things that I think about anytime some, let's call it, new shiny object comes along. And there's been several technology trends that are like that. One of the things I really like about the Microsoft approach is I think there's a meaningful ROI that can be grabbed fairly easily in a couple of ways, especially for those already within the Microsoft Office 365 or the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And so that's I think a really important thing. I think another thing to point out is like I like the let's call it philosophical approach. Why are they calling it Copilot? Because it's an acknowledgement that AI, at some level, is not really intelligence, but it mimics intelligence, and it is not going to give you everything without the need to review or to check or verify it, for instance. So, just like all forms of AI out there right now, they can give answers that need improvement sometimes. So the real question is, so what then can it do for you? And I think the real answer is like to say, well, what is the productivity boost? It's funny, as a leadership team in SnapTech IT, just in December, we were finishing up our annual planning for 2025. And in that process is we're using the EOS system, or traction as it's called, to set up annual goals for 2025, looking at our 3-year picture and long, and even quarterly rocks or goals. We suddenly found how quickly and easy it was for us to write the description of those rocks by feeding our discussion topic sentences into Copilot and say, create me a document that's a goal. And so what would have taken a person, they'd go aside and they'd come back to the next meeting, an hour or so time of writing, suddenly took about 3 minutes to generate a very good start and only another couple of minutes to finish up. And so to me, that's the ROI case. Is it's not that it does everything for me, but it's my Copilot, and it gets all sorts of stuff quicker for me and gets me a better start. And so there's so many places that you can do it. You really have to think through, okay, what is the value of the spend? What is the amount of time? Microsoft says, hey, for the average person, we think this is at least 10 hours of saving a month. And that's why they think this price point in this $30 range makes a ton of sense. And I would say for me, yeah, that's true. It easily is saving me that amount of time. I think you have to always ask, where does it belong in your company? Where does the ROI exist? Is it for everybody? Is it for certain people that would benefit most on use cases? There's so many places that you could consider it. And I think that's really the work that you have to do, is say, okay, well, how would it apply to our organization? Is this an executive tool? Is this a marketing tool? Is this a technical writing tool? Is this a code generation tool if you're coding? That's one of the interesting areas about Copilot, is it's exceptionally good at helping you write certain types of code. And so if you're doing that kind of work in your company, that can be a really strong use case, particularly when you use one of the Copilots that we're not specifically focusing on, but the Copilot for GitHub, which is a code repository system. But for the average everyday user, there's some terrific integrations for efficiency, terrific integrations directly in Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Copilot in Outlook, Copilot in Teams. I am a huge fan of the Teams Copilot. I can't tell you how often I'm participating in the Microsoft ecosystem, which I love and is very helpful, but I can't remember whether we just talked about that thing that I'm trying to think of in a Teams chat, or was it an email? Did we have it in a memo document? Where was it? And I can just pop into Copilot and Teams and say, hey, help me find this conversation. And really quickly, it can tell me exactly where it was. The other exciting thing we've done is we've fed Copilot some of our policy documents and procedural things. And now I can just ask Copilot, what's our policy for this? What's our procedure for that? And it very quickly comes back. It tells me where it found it and exactly what the answer is. And so the ability to find this stuff that is now hard to find only because we use the tool so much. It's so many things we have going on and so many conversations. It becomes difficult. And the search is so improved by Copilot because it has the scope of anything in email, anything in your documents that's in your OneDrive, anything that's in Teams, and you can quickly find and zone in and go right to it. And so there's just some terrific ROI there, as well as some of the meeting summary features that you get. Like, for instance, you're in a Teams meeting, you record a transcript and have Copilot analyze it for to-do and action items, and those things now show up in your searches as well. So you can ask it about what we talked about in this meeting, and it's really terrific. So I feel like I could go on about all these different use cases, but I think that's really where you have to ask yourself, it's like, will it provide the savings that make sense for the spend? As a business owner, I'm always thinking about the return on investment. For me, I found it strong. I found it strong in our organization, and we've been seeing some of our clients really getting into prototyping and testing, and some into full adoption as they've gone through this experience. And so I think it's really worth examining what would that Copilot inside your Word document do for you. And Another really big use case for me is I really like the email authorship. It's right in Outlook. You hit new email and there's a button where you can say, I want to write an email about this, and it will author it for you. And you can say, I want it to be friendlier. I want it to be shorter. There's some really great tools. If you haven't played around with these types of AI things, there's some very powerful things it can do with the language.
Right on. And then let's talk about kind of the importance, if you decide to deploy this for your organization, having an executive sponsor and having a strategy around deploying it.
So it's funny. I was having a conversation with a client just yesterday. We were in one of our QBR meetings, and they were talking about how they had a person in their organization that decided to just start using a new tool that they had found and didn't tell anybody about it. And then suddenly just like showed up one day saying, I'm using this now. Um, there is something to be said about communicating, organizing, and setting the standard and setting the expectation, right? And that truly comes from the top. This is why executive sponsorship is an important element of this. You can say, hey, I'd like the team to do an AI initiative, but if you don't really lead the charge or help them understand what you want to get out of or drive the purpose that you're doing it, you might not get the results you're looking for. And so having people kind of randomly trying a few things on their own, might be okay for some level of exploration, but I would argue a more visionary led approach, stating the purpose, evaluating it for its true value and its true ROI is going to be a better way to adopt it and a better way to signal to the organization your desire to implement this as a new tool. Because that's truly all it really is. It's a tool to enable your workers to do things more efficiently. And that's what you should be driving them to ensure that they're doing, not just kind of enjoying and having fun with it, although it can be entertaining sometimes. And so, this is part of the way that you can foster the innovation. This is a way that you can mitigate risk, is by having these conversations and training your people. This next topic about AI risks for business is an important one. It's a question we get every time we talk about it, and I think a savvy business owner has thought through this, and hopefully it's something that's occurred to you if you've begun to use AI, which is there are some forms of AI that if you feed it documents that you want it to help you with, that document now becomes part of the greater repository that is publicly available. That should be a concern for any business owner on documents and your own fiduciary responsibility to keep private things private. One of the, I think, biggest ways that Microsoft Copilot is something that should be considered is it is out of the gates architected to not share your data in a wider scope like that. It can take advantage of it and help you, but it stays within the bounds of your company's own security barriers inside of Office 365 or Microsoft 365. That's an important distinction. I have seen some other different forms of AI out there start to work on attempting to this, but this has been Microsoft's approach from the get-go, and it's their foundational architecture. So I just think it's really important you understand that this is a major advantage, and Copilot, it can meet compliance requirements, and it is going to keep your data within the realms of what you're already securing within Office 365. That's a huge benefit. I think the other things to watch out for, as we talked about on the slides here about, for instance, the AI bias, the things some people don't understand is it can hallucinate things, particularly, see, AI is really a field of study, and there's the large language models, and then there's generative AI that looks at that data and tries to predict what the next thing could be. That's the generative AI. And that's where AI is going to sometimes give you an answer that may not be good because the data that fed it led it down that path, or it could have been incorrect data, or it literally can hallucinate. But it's going to have a bias based on the data that you feed it. And so that's an important piece of how that works, and understanding and making sure your people understand that you cannot just simply rubber stamp an AI document and assume that everything in it is factually correct. Just like you can't do a Google search and assume everything you find on Wikipedia, for instance, is factually correct. It's no different in that sense. So these are really important things to point out. And intellectual property concerns similar. Who owns the data and how does it work, and are you sure where that data is going? This, in my opinion, really leans and points heavily to the favor of Microsoft's approach from the business use case standpoint of your data. And so, once again, we've been having these conversations with our customers now. We've been asking them to really consider what is the best way to go about this. I spoke a minute ago about executive sponsorship, driving a vision. Another key element, I think executives are thinking about how is the company making money and how are we de-risking the company. And an AI policy is a great way to signal to your team exactly what is appropriate use of AI for in your organization and what isn't. And some of our customers are in highly regulated environments and they have a lot of concerns about AI. The good news is we've been able to establish that the Copilot AI can meet these these compliance requirements. That being said, having defined guidelines on what AI is acceptable and in what use and what data can be exposed to that AI is important. It's also to understand what legal or ethical restrictions you may have of your information. You may not. You may have a client that expects that you do not feed their data to an AI, as an example. And then there is this term you find out there, and I sort of made reference to this at a client before a minute ago. It's called shadow IT. And this is where, sometimes because people are curious or they just explore, or sometimes they're even encouraged to do so, but people just start creating and using AI tools or just IT tools in general, and they don't coordinate and they don't clear it and they don't get it approved or there's no conversation about it. And so that's referred to as shadow IT because it happens but nobody ever coordinated or approved it. And so you just want to pay attention to when your team might be using AI and you don't know, or just IT tools in general. And shadow IT has its issues, and it may not be what you want. A policy and a clear statement and a vision is a far better way to make it clear what's acceptable, what's not, and understand the risk in your business. I love this slide because about hardening your 365 environment. One thing, if there's anything I could say to folks out there, you're on Microsoft 365 and you have been using it for a while. I would say easily 9 times out of 10, when somebody has our organization take a look at their Microsoft 365 environment, their Office 365 environment, they have not done any hardening on that. They simply turned it on and it functions. They'll even say, I bought this license because it provides the security for HIPAA regulations. I hear that all the time. But the reality of it is none of that is functional, even if you've licensed it, unless you've configured it. And so these are things that people don't realize on a regular basis, that their Microsoft or their Office 365 is either not licensed for the security features or they are licensed and they are not turned on. This is things like using the Microsoft Entra ID login. This is about turning on multi-factor authentication. There's also conditional access that does things like restrict people from certain geographies from logging in, or even from logging into your Office 365 unless they're in your office, you could do. They're not using alerting tools like we use a product called SaaS Alerts. And Microsoft 365 has no built-in backup system either. So they think their data is backed up, but it is not. And so these are some hardening realities that apply to Office 365 and also apply to Copilot, because Copilot simply rides along with however the security of your Office 365 is set up. It's a key element because if your Office 365 is well secured and well set up, so is your Copilot data and usage. And even if you're not using Copilot, you should probably be asking questions about these things, because I can't tell you how often people have bought Office 365 and got it working and never configured the security piece. And they don't ask questions because they think it's done and they're just using the product and it works. So worth considering where your hardening of your Microsoft 365 environment is at.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention that one of the most common projects we do when we onboard a new client is this whole process of hardening the Microsoft 365 environment. Because as Karl mentioned, it's very common that clients just presume, well, Microsoft's going to turn on by default all the right settings by default. And that's simply not the case. There's a number of reasons for that. I mean, I think they try to raise the bar to a certain level, but there's a whole host of things you're paying for from a licensing perspective that really require expert configuration and deployment. And you have to really know what you're doing. And so Microsoft doesn't turn those on by default. but it really, this is one of the projects we really help clients with, because you really got to realize that that whole platform, it's got a ton of security capabilities, but you really need to know what you're doing in terms of hardening those things and turning them on. And once you've done that, then you're also going to get that benefit when you've got Copilot deployed, because you have the peace of mind that you've actually fully maximized the security capabilities in the Microsoft platform.
But this is also the great advantage of Copilot, in my opinion, of all the AIs out there, is you can rest assured that if your Office 365 has these fundamental security things in place, so does your Microsoft 365 Copilot, which is comforting to know.
Yeah, and which is a good transition to this slide. And Karl and I debated whether this was a little too nerdy of a slide to have in the webinar, but I think it's a really good. I think it's timely that it's here in the presentation, and it underscores one of the biggest risks that organizations have today with AI technology. Karl mentioned it pretty early on. The very first kind of consideration is that if you just use any old AI solution, something like Claude from Anthropic, or you use ChatGPT, in the very early days, what a lot of people would do is they would take internal company content and they would feed it into the AI tool. And as Karl mentioned, that is taking your own intellectual property internally and exposing it to the large language model, and by virtue of doing that, you're incorporating your content into the larger model. You do not want to do that. So the beauty of what Microsoft has done is they already have 90% market share of the cloud collaboration space out there today. We're already trusting Microsoft by moving our email and calendar and Teams chats and video calls and all of our files into the Microsoft cloud. So there's already a high degree of trust in a properly configured Microsoft 365 environment. But the beauty of what Microsoft's doing with Copilot is they're now allowing AI technology to leverage that trust and that privacy we already have. And the way it works on this slide, to think about it, is Microsoft, when you think about all of the content in your organization, the Teams chats, the video calls, all of your files, if they happen to be in SharePoint and OneDrive, all of that content goes into what Microsoft calls your Microsoft graph. So it's your own organization's internal content. And then what Microsoft does with Copilot is they ground that data, so to speak, meaning Copilot can leverage that internal content, but it's not taking that content and incorporating it into the large language model. So that's why the Copilot icon is here in the middle. But if you do have a prompt where you're trying to leverage content from the large language model, from the larger content that's been incorporated into the model, and you're asking it, a prompt that is only going to get an answer not from your own internal content, but from the large language model, then Copilot's going to look to the large language model to give you back a piece of content or generated content. Or it can combine the two. But in every case, you're not compromising your own privacy, your own intellectual property by having it incorporated with the larger model.
Yeah, I remember in the early days, hearing stories of people going and querying ChatGPT for internal documents of their competitors, and they were able to pull some of them up because of the way they had been fed into the system. You do not have this issue with Microsoft Copilot. It's one of the benefits of their architecture is, I just say, it's built more for business in mind from the get-go, if that makes sense.
And I would say it's probably Copilot is the most. I mean, the first comment to make is that as of today, OpenAI's largest investor is Microsoft. The OpenAI architecture runs on Microsoft Azure, and Microsoft has really been the most successful in commercializing this technology for businesses, and is definitely driving the most revenue today. But because they have first of all, they have a very privileged position in the marketplace because so many businesses are already customers, but they've also very intelligently thought how to leverage this technology in the business marketplace. So we wanted to kind of touch on that slide there and then talk a little bit about data governance. Just a very practical thing that I think everybody kind of needs to realize is when you're using Copilot in Microsoft Word or in PowerPoint or Outlook today, one of the coolest things you can do is you can do a prompt that says, hey, draft something, but leverage a piece of content that what we already have worked on internally. It could be a transcript of a webinar that you've recorded, or it could be a memo that was already written, or it could be a transcript of a recording of a talk you saw. It could be, and as Karl mentioned, like you can build Copilot workflows that leverage like a large repository of content you may have inside your organization, say your own knowledge base. And that's some of the cool things that we're doing internally is, take our massive knowledge base of working with clients for years and having tons of standard operating procedures, and then expose it in a very easy way to our technicians so that they can really turbocharge their work and become super expert at something by being able to find the answers to their questions more quickly. So the one thing you need to kind of realize is when you're using these functions in Copilot, most of the time, the document repository you're going to point to needs to be in SharePoint or OneDrive. Now, there's a whole ecosystem of file collaboration platforms out there, companies like Ignite and Box and Dropbox, and they are aggressively innovating to make sure that their file collaboration platforms can plug into the Microsoft ecosystem. There's a lot of catching up to do. There's some catching up to do, admittedly, but there are some cool use cases today. But in general, as you get started with this technology, you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck in the short term when you're doing a query that points to existing content or libraries of content. You're going to want those to be in OneDrive and SharePoint. Now, by the same token, I think that what you need to realize as you go to turn on Copilot is as you turn on this tech, this is kind of to the whole Microsoft 365 hardening. You really need to make sure and double check that your data governance structure on especially SharePoint files is correctly thought through. You don't want James in the sales department to be able to query documents in the HR folders or the payroll folders in the administration side of your business. Now, how do you control that? Well, every SharePoint site or SharePoint folder has permissions. And these permissions have always been there, and it's a core part of the way the Microsoft File Collaboration Platform works, is a properly configured Microsoft File Collaboration environment is going to have all of those controls, meaning principle of least privilege, people should only have access to what they need to get their job done, and you need to have very good departmental controls on different file repositories so that a tool like Copilot doesn't all of a sudden become like your worst nightmare with overly inquisitive or curious internal employees going on fishing expeditions through content inside the organization that they shouldn't see.
What, those exist? There are people out there that poke around. What is this?
There's a lot of curious employees. So,
one of the reasons why I think this is an important point is because some people may have already curiously like poked around and created some OneDrive or a SharePoint page, and a lot of them kind of have done it without maybe the assistance of an expert. They may have started doing something, and what you'll get is typically is like one big share, and anything in it's kind of there for anybody. And sometimes people even realize it, and sometimes they don't. And so you just want a little bit of a look over to make sure you got your foundations correct. This is nothing new. It just also applies to Copilot.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
It's always been the case. And it's always been probably one of the biggest challenges organizations face with file collaboration platforms is thinking through data governance and the principle of least privilege. But it really just is turbocharges the problem, if you will, now that you're putting Copilot in the hands of larger numbers of employees in your workforce.
I got that question from just yesterday, that same QBR meeting I referred to earlier. The client's like, no, wait a minute. What if I ask it about a conversation the CEO was having with the CFO? Is it going to give me answers and tell me what's going on? They say, no, not because we happen to know how their data governance is structured and set up. No, only what you would normally have access to will you be able to ask.
That's right.
I got a follow-up question here, folks.
Sure.
So we got Sandy asking, are you saying that using Copilot Chat will grab data from the large language model also outside of your Microsoft? So it is pulling from the same data as ChatGPT, question mark?
Yeah. So Copilot really can do both. it can pull data out of the so it's like having a chat GPT. In fact, I used to have a chat GPT license and I didn't use it to feed sensitive information to, but I liked the interaction, the research assistance. Frankly, it was a better search engine, for things. And I no longer license that since Copilot, because I really get all that functionality within Copilot, as well as the ability for it to query the internal documents that are contained within our Microsoft Graph or our Office 365 data, email, Teams, SharePoint, so forth, so on. And so, yes, it does give you the ability to do the same kind of things same kind of conversation you would have with a ChatGPT or other consumers of the large language model.
But when it's doing responding to a prompt that's leveraging both your internal content and the large language model, it's keeping your private content private in that process.
At sub-level, that's what this slide is actually trying to say. And when it says grounding, it's referring to how it's not giving your personal information to the LMM, but still allowing you to prompt and retrieve information from it, and then recombining it together to what it gives you.
Yeah, and I could give a very simple example. One of the ways we're using this technology today is as you all know, we do these webinars on a monthly basis. We record them with GoToWebinar. It produces an MP4 file. We take that MP4 file, we feed that into a transcription tool that turns that into a transcript. And then one of the ways what we've traditionally done is we've usually written a blog about our webinar, because that's what you want to do with marketing, of course, is you want to produce the content once and then execute it across 6 different ways to have a conversation. And what we do with Copilot is in Microsoft Word, we use Copilot and we say, hey, write a 500-word blog for me about our recent webinar and use this 37-page transcript, which is a recording of the webinar, as the kind of the meat, if you will, of what we want in the blog. But at the same time, Copilot is going to take that, but leverage the intelligence of the large language model to craft the actual blog itself. And then we're presented with it'll generate a 500-word blog that is leveraging our internal content and also leveraging the power of the large language model to very quickly help us get a blog piece to like 80%. We've got to add the last 20%. We've got to triple check all of the facts. We got to make sure there's no hallucinations, et cetera. But that would be an example of leveraging internal content plus the large language model.
Yeah, and I would say like there's a couple trigger words that are now coming quickly recognized as AI created content. Like it says fosters something, it's AI. And so you just drop that word from your vocabulary. And what you're right, there's a few things that start to become obvious. In fact, there's even tools out there to detect how is this written by AI. There's always value to putting your own touch on it and avoiding some of the repeating common AI driven words. But the work of writing something that is 80% there or even more is a significantly different proposition than doing the research, collecting the thoughts, putting it together, creating it, and then refining it and drafting it and drafting and finalizing. It's just so much faster.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no. One of our final slides here and kind of considerations is how to think about how to use this technology, and we'll comment a little bit further on that in a moment. But there's no question. The employees that are going to be put out of work by AI are the ones who refuse to embrace this new technology, and the organizations that are going to struggle in this new world are the ones who maybe put their head in the sand and don't embrace this technology, because it's just a productivity game changer. If your competition can write their blog articles and make them just as good and just as relevant and just as on message to their company message and do it at 1/10 the time it takes you, the competition is going to beat you. So anyway, that's at least my own personal point of view, that this technology is very much a game changer in terms of productivity, but you can also make it your own. We're not all going to necessarily start sounding alike if you're using it in the right way, which is a good segue to this concept of training. This technology is deceptively simple, but it's also prone. You can also step in it a lot. You can also make a lot of mistakes, like we've talked about with some of the concerns and considerations. Is there can be hallucinations. sometimes the hallucinations can be so dramatic that what it gets produced is kind of like almost like a Frankenstein monster. So those are usually easy to spot. It's the more subtle ones where you have to be careful, where the AI hallucinates and you're not even paying close attention. And there's a lot of like tricks of the trade, right? So we all have like all of these habits that we've built up in our careers, and how we've learned to work. And people need to develop new skills and to be pushed in new directions. And so training is a huge part of being successful with this technology. What we're showing here is a screenshot of just a handful of the courses that are available on Udemy. We're big fans of Udemy. It's one of the really, I think, really successful online training platforms out there. It's very cost effective. The trainings are very compelling. And this is just a small sampling of some of the Copilot and AI related content that's on Udemy. So we're big believers in, use this technology, deploy it correctly, deploy it securely, make sure your IT department or your service provider is helping you put in those guardrails and secure things, but also think about how to make your people productive from day one by giving them the budget and the mandate to go get trained on how to use this tech, and then leverage some of these great resources that are out there.
Yeah, there's no doubt if you just simply license and say, go work on it, that's going to be the slowest way to success, and perhaps even building bad habits or even bad opinions that aren't correct. It's like anything skill set. Like, I know I see lots of people like putting out courses or even like social media posts, like how to do better prompting, how to better type, how to better interact with their AI. There is definitely a skill set to be developed there. And now you put it into the context of it seeing your data at work, as well as this like interactive dialogue you're having back and forth about things that the great LMM has learned by reading every book and website that ever existed. It's quite comprehensive, quite powerful, and you will take the best use of it the more energy and effort you put into developing the skill set.
That's right. So I think just a reminder, bring your questions. We'll have a couple more minutes for questions here. And this is one of our final thoughts and considerations we wanted to share today. And we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but very much this tech it's Copilot, not autopilot. If you put it on autopilot, you're invariably going to run into some speed bumps and potholes, and some of those could be very dangerous or damaging to your brand or reputation, and could be financially damaging. So keep that in mind. This technology is powerful, but there are a pretty long list of considerations, right? But one of the most important ones is that these generative AI tools will only make us so we all sound like we're just regurgitating the same content if we don't put our own soul into the effort, and we don't put our own content and know-how. I mean, I provided the example earlier of, hey, how are you going to turbocharge your blogging effort? Well, leverage the transcripts of all the cool meetings and conversations and workshops you're already doing. So leverage your own points of view, your own internal know-how, your own intellectual property in what gets produced, but then leverage the AI tool to make yourself that much more productive. So that's what we mean by, make it your own, leverage your own internal content. And this is where organizations that have already a big body of knowledge and a lot of know-how, they're going to use this technology to dramatically boost their employees' productivity, but they're going to leverage it on a foundation of their own internal content and know-how. And you can truly do it with everything we've talked about with Copilot today. Microsoft is giving you the ability to keep your own content and secure, but to then leverage this tool. And there's a lot of different ways you could imagine doing this. But again, Copilot, not autopilot. Karl, any final thoughts on this dimension to it?
But wait, I just wanted to sit back and relax like this guy, So what's going on?
Exactly.
So,
the plane could crash if you're not.
Don't worry about those hundreds of people back there.
You're not paying attention. So.
Look, my final thought is it's like this. I think we all have like an inherent sense that there's something we should be thinking about and learning and doing, and hopefully you're getting some value out of this content. Like for us, it's not like we make a lot of money off of teaching people about Copilot. hopefully it helps you see us as people who genuinely want to help you with technology. That's what we want out of this, and for our customers, for them to become more competitive and better customers, therefore longer lasting customers for us, right? But so our goal and aim is to simply help people make good decisions and to see us as a resource. And this stuff around AI that we are working on is, I think, going to be game changer. I think it already is for some. And so just ask yourself questions where you're at and what can you do. You shouldn't just blindly go into it, but man, you probably should start if you haven't yet. You know, those R2D2s on our survey, maybe there's something more to understand. And the other folks are, I have it and I'm not sure where to go next. And so pay attention to some of the future content we have. We have some very practical stuff. We're also doing workshops where we have computers people can come and log into. Oh, hey, like, here we go. Here's our, it's almost like you have this plan. I'm just talking about the things that we're doing. We're doing in-person lunch and learns. We're doing workshops. We see this as a way that you can hopefully get value from us and appreciate our efforts. Maybe one day that means that you talk about IT services with us, but in general, we're just excited to raise the bar and help people understand what we think is kind of the next wave that's in many ways already started. So.
Yeah, and just a little bit of extra detail on these ways to learn more. In February, we're doing Copilot workshops in 3 different cities. The format of these workshops is they're a 4-hour hands-on workshop. So we actually have a computer lab environment that simulates a small company, and we all get together in a large boardroom and work together using the technology hands-on for a couple hours together. And that whole hands-on dimension really is very transformative. I mean, I think it really, seeing is believing to a large degree, and that these events are about 75% filled up, so we have a handful of seats left in each city. So if you're interested in that, go to the Snaptech website and go to the events section on our website and get engaged. And then we're doing, in the month of March, lunch and learns in 3 different cities, where over lunch, more of an educational session, but a lot of demos, more demo. Today was more kind of policies, considerations, that sort of thing. The lunch and learns, we're trying to make them very demo focused. Like show me how you use this tech. So I do want to quickly pause. Nathan, are there any questions queued up for us?
Yeah, so just another real quick thing, because the Copilot workshops are in such high demand and we just have a few seats, email me. If you're interested in getting registered, please email me, ncaldwell@snaptechit.com. That is the absolute and the only way to get registered for our upcoming workshops. But soon the Lunch and Learns will also have registration sites up and available. Or if you want to email me and let me know what city you're interested for that, I'm happy to put you on my short list and directly reach out to you as well. All right, yeah, so questions. Go ahead.
Real quick. These, just to understand, these things are complementary, but there is limited space and they do fill up. And if you don't make it into this one, if you just let us know, that we're likely to do more this year. We'll be developing and improving and evolving our content as we go, but nonetheless, not everybody can make it, unfortunately, because of the size restrictions just on the rooms and how we do this. But anybody can come, and so we welcome, and if we can fit you in, we would love to.
Fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so questions here. Is Copilot Pro an option if you use Office 365 E3?
So the Pro piece is always meant for the solo person, private, not work related. And so any of the small business SKUs, any of the E SKUs, the E1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so forth, so on, the M SKUs, as you say, that you buy that are business focused, they would all, in order to leverage Copilot, you'd need to go to the Microsoft Copilot product, which is the one that's in the $30 a month range. The Pro is meant for somebody who's like maybe a solopreneur or personal use, and you'd like to leverage higher levels of technology, but it does not coordinate with your team, does not work with your Microsoft Graph. It would not do when you're asking, does it work with E3? No, you have to go for the other version. It's meant more for the personal use case for somebody that wants to supercharge their their AI experience at a personal level.
All right, the next question is, we utilize Microsoft Power BI to create data visualizations for our company. And in 2025, we're planning on utilizing Copilot Studio. I know we
Right.
will need a Copilot Studio license for my IT team to create our internal AI, but will my team members also need a Copilot license, the $20 or $30 version, to prompt and interact with that AI? My
Yes.
overarching goal is to have our Power BI reports AI compatible that we can interact with.
Yeah. So to consume a dashboard or a report does not require a license of any form, right? You can do that and provide those things. Interact, query, ask questions. Yeah, you got to have the license functionality. I suppose there might be some way of designing some agents that allow for some like collective use of that, and that's definitely things we're seeing other AI companies are getting involved with in ways of like leveraging some public resource to do a backend license connection, so you don't have to have everybody who interacts licensed. I'm not aware of that functioning that way in the Copilot process. And for those of you who don't know what they're asking about, the Copilot Studio is the way that you can essentially create your own really realm for a Copilot usage for a specific purpose. You can attach agents to it that can do automations. It's very interesting and very cool technology, and I expect it to only grow in usage and the cases. But as far as I'm aware, if you want the people to prompt and have this interaction back and forth, they need to be licensed.
Nathan,
All right, and the last question here is, do you have recommended resources to train up staff members? Guys, look at the slide that we are on. Recommended resources to train up staff members? Absolutely. Your friends here at SnapTech IT, we're offering a lot of training resources. We actually have some webinars on this as well. But Ted, take the mic, tell them about Udemy, talk about these training courses that are available out there.
Yeah, so like Nathan mentioned, engage with us on some of our programming, check out our YouTube channel. But yeah, Udemy, in terms of self-paced learning, we're big fans of Udemy. There's a couple different companies that do this. Coursera is another one, Skillsoft. So there's a growing library of content. The beauty, I mean, I actually took a Udemy course like a year and a half ago when I just kind of like when the light bulb went off and I'm like, man, I've got to get expert on this tech. And I just kind of dove in headlong myself. And I did a Udemy course. And the beauty of the Udemy courses is they're quite affordable. We're talking like $10 to $20 a course per student. And it's all self-paced and online. And also there's exercises. There'll be like a document repository, and you can go do hands-on exercises so you can follow along. So it's not just like leaning back. You can actually lean forward, actually follow along with some of the exercises. So I'm a pretty big fan of Udemy, so I would check that out.
I would add one other quick thing that I've noticed. Like, I've started seeing Microsoft is really working hard at improving their own game here on, it's like, for instance, as soon as you license somebody today on the Microsoft Copilot license, they'll get an email saying, here's your journey. Microsoft has a new section called Learning in Office 365 where courses can be assigned and provided collectively. I wouldn't say that it's all the way there, but I would assume that it's only going to get significantly better as we go. And it already has some pretty good like initial orientation content that's just part of the Microsoft ecosystem that they'll start sending you emails about joining. But I would say that's not the best place. I really like the approach of some of these ones that have been doing it a little longer and their content is developed a little bit more specifically. And so you'll probably do better there.
That's right. Okay, so just a final comment. If you were excited about what you heard today and you'd like to spend some one-on-one time with experts on this, one thing we love to do is just have an appointment with you and hop on a Teams call, and we can chat through some of the things your organization might be thinking about or wrestling with. So if you would like to set up an appointment with one of our experts, use the QR code on the left. And then just a reminder, we do these webinars monthly. Next month, we're going to be doing automation and productivity life hacks. And Nathan and I are going to be bringing, 5 to 10 of our best life hacks, technology life hacks around productivity to the table. So feel free to tune in, and you can go ahead and register by just capturing that QR code right there. And with that, we want to thank everybody for joining us on our first webinar of the year, and we look forward to seeing you on a future one. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karl. Okay, bye now.